I'm Julie Anderson, Editor-in-Chief of the Orlando Sentinel. We decided to do this forum after we reported a series called Toxic Secret about a little-known contaminant called 1,4-dioxane that contaminated some water, drinking water, in northwest Seminole County, Sanford, and Lake Mary. We got such a response from the readers that we decided we needed to open it up and let the community talk to us, ask questions. We wanted to make our reporters available and public officials so we could get more information out. So our co-moderators are Roger Simmons, Managing Editor of the Orlando Sentinel. He's been with the paper for 30 years, and he was a main editor on the series. We also have Tammy Fields, who is co-anchor of News 13 and has been with the station for 7 years. So I'm going to turn it over to Roger and Tammy.
Welcome to our event. We want to tell you about a couple of things. This is being live streamed right now on orlandosentinel.com and Orlando Sentinel's Facebook page. And we just want to thank the panelists for being here with us. We invited a number of people that we thought would be important to talk about this issue, and these people graciously showed up. Kevin, when did you first find out about this?
So early this year, I picked up a little information about what we're here to talk about tonight. And with the background I have in environmental reporting, I pretty quickly realized that this is big. I don't have anything to compare it to in Central Florida in any event. There are cities that have had wells impaired by, say, some ingredients of gasoline or pesticides, but for two cities and a big part of a county to be troubled, impaired with this chemical, there's no comparison for it. So we jumped in.
And then Caroline, one of the issues we had was trying to find out information about the medical aspects of this, and you're our medical and health reporter. How much of a trouble did you have finding someone to be able to talk about this?
There's very few scientists that have done research on this topic, and even fewer that have done research recently. I got sort of lucky. There was very recently, in 2022, a center at Yale University was started to that was dedicated to researching this chemical, and I was able to link up with the lead investigator there. In one way, my job was easy because there wasn't much to find, but in another way, it is very difficult to categorize the health risks of this chemical just because there's been just very little research looking at the human impact of this.
Martin, this question is for you. What can you tell us about the former Siemens plant in Lake Mary that really seems to be at the center of the story?
Well, this plant was built in 1968 by General Dynamics, and they manufactured these circuit boards for telephone equipment. And as part of that whole process on their assembly line, they used solvents, and these solvents contained a lot of chemicals, TCE, TCA, and also later on this 1,4-dioxane. And the allegation is that they were careless with these solvents. There's allegations that they poured them into the ground. The used solvents were then put into these 55-gallon metal drums, and they were stacked outside, according to former employees that we talked to, and they leaked. And they leaked into the ground, and nobody back then really thought anything of it.
What is the best way out of this toxic trouble? Let's start right now with the mayor of Sanford.
First of all, it's to have DEP identify who is responsible for this, so we know who should be paying for it. So far, our ratepayers have been carrying the cost of us doing the research, and our staff has been dogged at going after this and trying to figure out what's going on and how do we protect our water supply. We know there are treatment options, but they're expensive.
We have already started aggressive testing throughout our system, which we had testing, but we've made even more aggressive testing. We are working and cooperating with the cities even more than we ever have. We've, as I said, brought in consultants. We are doing internal and external communications analysis to ensure transparency. We are investigating going after the polluters.
We can look at treatment options, we can look at shutting down wells. There are several things that we can look at from a technical perspective, but I think first and foremost, from a community standpoint, we need to be collaborating, sharing data amongst ourselves, and disseminating that information.
These solutions are expensive, And so when you take cities like Lake Mary, Sanford, and even Seminole County, you're talking about drilling these monitor wells that can easily run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. We, Sanford and Lake Mary, do not have the financial capability to get and have a fight with a 500-pound gorilla like the three responsible parties. And so, with all due respect, unless you've got a deeper pocket than I know about, the county is in the same boat we are. There's only a limited amount, and the only one that can deal with that 500-pound gorilla are the Department of Health and the DEP.
Part of the problem that it seemed like in our reporting was that Sanford was doing its own thing, Lake Mary was doing its own thing, Seminole was doing its own thing. Are you all talking now about a coordinated response to the state to get them to do something?
The answer is yes. We've the county manager has already opened up discussions with both Lake Mary, Sanford, and the other cities. And as I said, in what I've already talked about earlier about what we're doing, we are investigating going after the polluters.
I think the point is, why don't we talk about those three responsible parties and what in the hell are they doing other than denying that they've got any responsibility? Now that you've established that the 1,4-dioxin is getting away from the Seaman site, what are you going to do about it? And DEP is the one that's got the horsepower to go after the three responsible parties and get them to start doing a full investigation of this 1,4-dioxin. And that's where the heat needs to be applied.
Questions from the audience that we'll go to.
Gary asks, how can we be sure that the water purity standards in place today are adequate for our safe water? Are there limits to 1,4-dioxane sufficient? Are they based on science, medicine, testing, and supported by technical papers, peer review, and public notice?
That 0.35 parts per billion is a recommendation, not a requirement. They have requirements on 90 plus different contaminants, but not this one. This one is very recent. In Canada, I think the recommendation is 50 parts per building. And I think everybody welcomes this health study that has been referred to from Yale, because we can, obviously, until we know more, we're in the dark as much as everybody else.
This is a good question, and perhaps I think Mr. Rankin, you can answer this, I hope. This is from Joe, who lives in Lake Mary, Markham's Woods area. Does reverse osmosis filters remove 1,4-dioxane from our drinking water? If not, what types of alternatives does a homeowner have to detect and remove this?
I don't know of any on the market. There may be some carbon filters out there. If you have lower levels, it may reduce some of it. It's not going to remove it all.
Briefly, Caroline and I hunted this down. The question of whether reverse osmosis will remove 1,4-dioxin, and it does, a lot of it, but not all of it. And systems vary as well. So some of the toughest advocates out there for clean water don't recommend reverse osmosis. They say, call up your city, your county, their utilities, and get on them to fix it, because they really, the only ones who have access to the technology to clean up your water.
What can you all do to help ensure that the next time something like this pops up, that there's more transparency, that people know about it?
We need to first be better stewards of what's getting into our water, because it's a lot less expensive and a lot easier to keep it out than it is to get it out once it's there.
But what we have already said we are going to do, I think, is very important. One was already mentioned. We are working on a dashboard that we will put with our aggressive testing, all the information about that testing on that dashboard, so that everyone in Seminole County can easily go and see exactly, in their area, what's going on.
And I'm going to turn this back over to my boss, Julie Anderson.
And thank you all for coming. We are going to continue to cover this. I'm from Orlando as well. I've lived here my whole life, and this is one of the biggest issues we've ever covered, I believe. And we're going to keep on it until we get all the answers. But it really does depend on you two to get involved and press your elected officials as well. If you want to help support us, subscribe. That's what you can do. And you can read about it here.